Happy December and welcome to Becoming Church, the podcast where we discuss how the message and movement of Jesus is not just about becoming Christians, but about becoming the church. I'm your host, Kristen Mockler-Young, and today we are starting off the holiday season with a little mental health care. Because I don't know about you, but for me, I will admit that the holiday season can bring some added stress. I originally invited my friend Hannah Brencher to come on and talk about her book, Come Matter Here, a book that made me absolutely fall in love with her as a writer way back in 2019. A few years later, I joined her launch team for her next book, Fighting Forward, in 2021. And then just this last year, I got to meet her in person at a retreat for women in ministry. And I was so delighted that she really is the kind of person who just makes you feel lighter after being with them. I'm so pleased to introduce you to my friend, Hannah Brencher. All right, Hannah, welcome to Becoming Church.
Thanks for having me. I've been so pumped to have this conversation.
Oh,
so ever since I met you.
Which that was this year, right?
I know. Yeah, it was, I think like March or April.
Yeah.
So crazy. Yeah. We're at the end of the year now.
Camp with Jess. I think she just did another soul camp. And part of me was super excited for the ladies that were there. And also I was like, oh, I want to go back.
I want to be back there. Yeah. It was such a good time.
So refreshing. Well, it is officially, it's not soul camp season, but it's holiday season. Where are you in your holiday planning?
I brought it on early this year. It was like we have always gotten a real tree. And this year we went fake because I was like, I got to have a tree. I just got to have some joy. I am currently sitting beside a large stack of Christmas presents.
Perfect.
I think that
wait. Like decor presents, or you have already done that much shopping?
I've already done the shopping.
Hannah, I'm so impressed and jealous.
I think though, here's the thing. I think that when I look at the month, I look at the year, December by nature, I think is meant to be a cool down season, right? Before we ramp up again, I think I look at it kind of like a workout, and at the end of the workout, you should have the cool down. And that's what I see December as. But I think that we fill December with so much stuff that we really don't get the chance to cool down. And so for me, it was you know what? I can't control the events that are going to happen in December, but I can control some of this. And so I tried to get a lot of the shopping done early so that when December hits, I can just sit and enjoy Advent. And
cheer on the rest of us who are now running our marathons because we were not that planned ahead.
I'm constantly asking myself, how do I want to feel about this? And what I don't want to feel this year is it's Christmas Eve and I have to go out to the stores, which has been me for many years. So I'm I'm little by little just getting it done because Thanksgiving is late this year. So it's
Yeah. Oh, I wrote that. I just wrote that question down too. How do I want to feel about this? I'm we could apply that to so many things.
So many areas. I apply it to all areas of my life.
That's good. It's so good. I love that. Well, and it relates too to all the things that we're going to talk about. Yeah. So I know it was a few years ago, but originally when I talked to you about coming on the podcast, I didn't know that you were about to release a new book, and I asked you to come on and talk about an old one. And so we're going to kind of do both today. But this Come Matter Here, I've got it right here.
My favorite.
Oh, my Lanta. I will try to explain to you how this book moved me. But first, tell people what it's about, and so they kind of know if this is for them.
Yeah. So Come Matter Here, the overarching theme of the book is learning to be rooted in the here and now, within a world that is always telling us to, live 5 years in the future, live in the next quarter, live 5 years in the past, whatever it may be. And for me, and I honestly think this is a core message for me, something I will reckon with for my entire life. I really struggled to be in the present moment. Mm-hmm. And that is my story of learning to be rooted in the here and now. But it's also a story, a very transparent and honest story of going through a very severe depression that nearly took my life, and coming out on the other side of that. And so I often say that depression was really the catalyst for me rebuilding my life on a more sure foundation, like on a more sustainable, at a more sustainable pace, rhythm, all of that. And so, yeah, it's kind of all encapsulated in Come Matter here, but each of the chapters is like a different theme that would apply to the reader.
Right. Yeah. And I don't even remember, I truly don't remember how this book came across like how it came into my world. I was not following you at the time. Somehow somebody must have recommended this. And so depression is not something that I would say has been part of my story. I can be very prone to bitterness, but I know that that's very different. So I don't even know why I picked this up and read it, but I do remember reading it in 2019. I was like relatively new on staff. I was new to ministry. I was trying to figure out like how someone like me who is very not like prim and proper, could be in ministry and in ministry leadership. And I just felt like I was living under this magnifying glass where everybody's purpose was just to like find my flaws and tell me why I probably wasn't good enough for ministry, not to get me out of it, but in a way of like changing me. Like, yes, God called you to this, but now you need to change everything about who you are, to answer it. And so one of the messages for me that I really took home, like you spend a lot of time talking to people about taking an honest look at who they are. And I think you wrote the sentence, you must allow people to get to know you if you ever want to be anything more than impressive to them.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, thank you. That sounds terrifying.
I don't want to take off the mask and I don't want to. Well, and it's interesting too, because I think especially like, cause I know we're kind of like interweaving conversations, but when you bring like all the tech that we have in daily life now into this, I think it's even harder because I think a lot of us have learned how to play and perform on the internet, right? Like,
for sure.
And so it's almost like when we take back the layers, when we take off the mask, it's like, wait, who even am I? I don't even know. I've acted as this one person for so long that like, when I get to the core of me, who is that person? And I think for a lot of us, it's like, that's like an unearthing process right there.
Yeah. Or we put the parts of it's tricky, right? It's attention. Like I try to be very honest and real and authentic on social media, but also, you do have to protect. There are things that you're not going to air out, but like also nor should you,
Yeah. Totally. I think, it's an ever expanding lesson and discovery, I feel like. Because I think for me, for a lot of years, it was like, oh, this is what people want to see. This is what people like. This is what makes people happy. I'll just do that. And even like now in like my 30s, I'm kind of like, wait, no, I'm getting back to like who I was and who I was meant to be. And it feels so freeing. But I think it's like you go so long on this path of just like, I'll do whatever people want me to do. I'll do what makes them happy. I'll like, if I had been in that role and people were like, change everything about you, there probably would have been a part of me, the people pleaser that was like, yeah, I'll do it. Okay. Yeah. You want me to fit in a box? I'll fit in your box. Like, and then you realize you're not meant to fit in those boxes.
Right. I also think it's a wavy line, like I did for a while tone down certain parts of me that honestly, Hannah, probably needed to be toned down a little bit.
It's a refining.
Like truly. But I've been able to then also find myself a little bit. And, it's like I had to like really, really like get small. I probably got too small in order to like find some humility. And then I've been able to then grow back up into who I really am, but like maybe in a little bit more mature way.
Yeah, totally.
Like it's like up and downs,
Up and down. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you talk about learning to be, I think you just mentioned this too, like learning to be where people are, right? Like where their feet are. How would you encourage somebody to do that if they're on this treadmill of like striving and trying to, always think ahead to the next thing?
Yeah, it's tough. It is like I was saying, like a lifelong quest. But it really is about like, there is a part in the book about like a girl that had sent me an email and she had like said that the motto that she and her roommates were living by at the time was this motto of just like, be where your feet are, And it's like, that is a continual reminder and a continual mantra in my life is just be here, be in the present moment. Like I love to set goals. I love to look ahead, but like, this moment has something for me. This moment needs something of me. And I think that we can very easily miss our lives if we don't live with that expectation. You know, like I'm somebody who's like chronically, if there are meetings on the calendar, like I tend to look at those meetings as like barriers to get me to the place where there are no meetings on the calendar. It was like, I just want to be like cozied up in my bed, watching Survivor, you know, like that's my sweet spot. But that's something I've had to challenge myself with of like, oh no, but like God, like, what if you were in these meetings? Like, what if all of these have divine purpose? Like, I want to step into each opportunity and each thing coming up ahead, being present and paying attention, because that's honestly the only way that I've ever seen God moving in these circumstances. Otherwise, I miss it. And I think the rub with it, what's hard about it, is that we see people living these extravagant lives. They're traveling, they're doing all these things, they're making all this money. It's very easy to look at your day-to-day life and say it's not good enough. We want to romanticize it. Like we just want to be in a different place. Yeah. Like we want to get to where that influencer is at or that speaker is at. When in actuality, it's like, no, your life like needs to be cultivated. Your life needs to be built. If you don't like something about your life, you actually have the power to change that. No, you can't change people. Like, I think that that's very important to state, but like you can change your posture. You can change how you show up. You can change how you pray. And like, that was such a revolutionary and something that I'm continually learning. It's like, I get to decide how to show up in this moment. And I get to show up I get to decide how to take up space in my ordinary everyday life that ends up actually being the most beautiful parts. I didn't know that for so long.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so much self-awareness too, like that has to be part of it. Like for me, you know, when I started speaking and things, I was like, I did exactly what you just said. I was like, well, now I need to be on this stage and now I need to have a bigger audience, because I was like, oh, God gave me this gift and I'm good at it. And that can be true. I do think that's true. But at the same time, I had to really ask myself hard questions of like, well, why do I want to be on that stage? And if I only ever use my gifts, I remember, I don't know if I was praying or where this question even came from, but I remember for a long time, I wrestled with like, if I only ever speak at Mosaic, like our home church and nowhere else, will that be enough? And at first I was like, yes, but inside I was like, no. And I knew that. And it's something that I have been praying for years. And truly over the last year, a big revelation actually at Soul Camp when we were with Jess, is I kind of had this realization that like, yeah, it actually would be. And if other opportunities open up, great. I would love it. I would love nothing more than to get to speak to more people, but I am so fulfilled in what I get to do here and still using my gifts and pastoring my people well. And, you know, I don't know how I would have arrived at that place without honestly praying, like, God, show up, like you were saying, show up in these spaces. Show me how this is
day-to-day life. Because it's like, if you're always waiting for like the big thing that's going to show up on the calendar, it's like, okay, but like, what if that's not until 6 months from now? What if that's not until a year from now? What if that's not 5 years from now? And that's like our culture, right? It's like, I remember living in that space where it's like, okay, like I'm doing my career, I'm hitting these milestones. The next big thing would be that I have to get married. The next thing after that, then I have to have a baby. There's all these like conventional constructs.
Yeah.
But in actuality, it's like, okay, but like, what if the person I'm meant to marry is not going to be ready for another 2 years? What am I doing in this interim time? And that is that like building the life that you love so that you don't have to say, I need to go somewhere else to feel like this is enough. And that's hard work, but it's good work. And then the beauty of it is that you still get to go out and live those dreams, enlarge your tents, enlarge your visions. But like, I don't know, it's like carrying that sense of enoughness within you wherever you go, that you're like, if I'm on a stage of 5,000 or I'm home wrapping Christmas presents, it's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you a tension question, right?
Yeah.
So we want to be in the moment and be where our feet are. But also when we started, you said your Christmas shopping was already done. So you clearly are living in the future a little bit, which I think both of these things can be true at the same time, but help the person listening who maybe is a little cynical, help them to understand like how we can be where our feet are and also plan maybe a little bit,
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that so I am a planner to my core. I am also, if you get into my work processes, I'm a batcher. I will batch. I send out a Monday Club email every Monday. But that is something where it's I sat down in August and I wrote all the Monday Clubs through the end of the year. Oh, and the reason that I do that is because I say, okay, if I don't do this, this could be the thing that does keep me from being in the moment, Okay. So when I don't batch the Monday Club email, I am often spending much of Sunday night on my computer trying to come up with a message, right? And so I think it's that planning to say, okay, how can I be the most present and awake in my daily life? And it's twofold. So it's oftentimes I sit in my quiet time in the morning. That's how I start my morning. I've stopped calling it my quiet time and I've started calling it my morning meeting, because what I will do is I'll get into the scriptures, I'll pray, I'll do all that stuff. But I've also just started to bring my calendar into the meeting, to be okay, God, you're in all of this. And if you want me to walk with you all throughout today, then let's look at what's coming up.
Oh, I love that.
But I also spend time sitting in silence to wait for the things that God might place on my heart, right? Because I've got my own plans. I've got my own agenda. God often has something different.
Right.
And so that is how in daily life, I root myself in the present moment. But something like Christmas shopping, in November is more so to say, okay, I really do want to preserve this season. That to me, this season is about Advent. It's about waiting well. It's about expectation. It's my favorite season of the year. So what would be the things that would deter me from walking this out peacefully? And one of those things for me is shopping. I'm going to be hustling to the stores with everybody else. And I didn't feel like doing that this year. And so that's where it's okay, I made a plan and then I just did it in bits. A lot of the gifts are gifts that I ordered. And so then to make that a joyful process, I set up a little cart outside of my door to bless all of our delivery drivers. And so it's kind of okay, how can I be in my present everyday life? But also, like we said, know the things in my life that are not working, that need to be tweaked, that need to be changed for me to be present. So for me, it might be this. For you, it might be, I might spend my whole entire season on TikTok. And it's okay, well, how do we look at that? And we plan and we reevaluate so that you can be more present. And I will say this too, talking about being where our feet are, being more present, actually living into the present moment. When you first get started, it's really uncomfortable. It's really not that fun. It's really not you're going to immediate. I don't think in practicing presence, I immediately was oh, it's all right here. I love this so much. You go through a season of wanting to just be what do I do with my hands? No, I need to do something. I need to plan something. It really is a practice. It's a practice of learning to be still, learning to say this is enough, learning to rewrite the stories. Because for me, the story was just you have to be going, you have to be doing, you have to be producing in order to be worthwhile. Right. And I think that's a lot of the stories of people within the church. And you start to dismantle that and tell yourself a different story. And it's all hell is probably going to break loose, because I think that would be a true victory for us to be present and awake to the right here, right now. And I think that's why there's so much opposition and so much resistance to it. Did that answer the question? It was Christmas presents resistance.
Yeah, it did. I think it was great. And you're right. I think the enemy wants us tapped out, right? And busy, because then guess what? We're not interruptible. That's the other thing I'm constantly reminding myself. Jesus was interruptible and he was doing far more important things than I'm doing, truly.
Yeah.
But he was constantly stopping for the people that need it. And there are times where I will get a text or whatever and I'm not now, not today,
No. And so for me, it's funny because it's I talk a lot about how in my courses that I teach on self-discipline and routines and rhythms. One of the things that I tell people to do is make a list of the person you're becoming. And I have them do this because I think it's very easy to hop on social media these days, see what's working for somebody else, try to adapt that lifestyle, even though that's not really even for you in some cases. And so if we can make a list of the person that we're becoming, then we can start to look at like, okay, what would be the habits and the rhythms and routines of that person, right? And for me, in my own process, I knew that I wanted to become a person that was not frantic, that was not last minute, that was intentional. Like I wanted that more than I've wanted any like career milestone, if I'm being honest. Because if you asked me a few years ago, I was the person that was like, oh, there's a birthday party. We're going to stop at Target on the way, grab the gift, throw it in a gift bag. And that's fine. That's all well and good. It felt very chaotic to me. It felt very like last minute. And so like, I think there's that part of me that is like, now I've given myself space to plan and to breathe and to be intentional, and like the rhythms and routines of somebody who is intentional and others minded. It's like, you know, there's time to put thought into a gift. There's time to wrap the gift. There's time like, and so that was where that came from, was like writing that down of like, I really want to be a person who is intentional and not frantic. This is how that kind of person acts.
I think that gives hope too, Hannah, to people who are in a season where they're like, I literally just cannot. Like I've got tiny kids, or I'm doing it all on my own, or whatever it is. I think that future planning gives hope to, maybe you can't control it right now. Yeah. But when you have the opportunity, like what small changes can you make?
Small tweaks. It's all small. It's all micro in everything. Honestly, like in my battle with mental illness. Small in unplugging, small. Like we try to overhaul, and that's why nothing ever changes. It's because we're always trying to do a 75 hard or a whole 30 or whatever it is.
Guess what? Again, is a doing. It's a doing of things.
Yeah.
Well, I want to hit on, before we get to the unplugged hours, you were very honest and vulnerable and authentic in Come Matter Here. And you mentioned you had a really severe season of depression. I know you just celebrated recently your Coming Out of the Woods Day. Woo! So tell me about that first. What did you do to celebrate?
Okay. So the day I was trying to explain this to my mom the other day, because she was like, wait, so coming out of the woods, is that the day you came out of the woods? And I was like, no, that's the day I went into the woods. Like, we took it back in the name of Jesus, you know? But my life broke into on November 18th, 2014. And I wrote recently about how I saw all the warning signs. I saw all the signs that I was probably depressed, but I didn't listen to them. I didn't slow down. I didn't get a therapist. I didn't do any of it. You know, I don't know why, but I just didn't. I think I was in denial. And on that day specifically, like the best way that I can describe it is like, it's like my brain broke, like really, truly. I felt a physical pain from my head to my toe. And from that moment forward, it felt like my brain was hijacked. I was having dark thoughts, ruminations, spirals. I would lose hours just thinking myself into these circles. And I met with a neurologist who basically explained that years later. It's like your brain basically broke. It was like too overloaded, too stressed, running too hard, that all systems went down. So I went from fully functioning, running a business to barely being able to send emails without having an anxiety attack. And over the next 4 months, fought hard for my life. And that was when I realized oh, okay, the way that I've been living is not sustainable. This get up and go and don't plant roots and don't let people in. It's not sustainable. It will literally kill me. And so it's funny because it's I think I remember coming up on the 1-year anniversary of November 18th and kind of freaking out, oh gosh, am I going to go back into this place, you know? Because it's the body remembers trauma, but I made a decision in that moment of no, I'm going to take this day back for me. I'm going to celebrate this day that the darkness didn't win in my story. So chronologically, that's the day that it looked like the darkness was going to win. But now looking back, I'm no, that's the day that I learned how to come out of the woods. And so every day I put it in the light. I encourage other people to figure out what their coming out of the woods day is, because it's different for all of us. And then I've done various celebrations. Sometimes we've gone on camping trips. We've gone on fancy dinners. literally this time was so simple. I did a bunch of that Christmas shopping because I thoroughly enjoy the shopping when it's not under a time constraint.
Right.
I didn't work that day. I went to Starbucks. I got a little holiday latte. I stocked all the things that I love to do that I feel like I can easily save for the pockets of time, and it's frantic. And so and it just was a day to savor and enjoy and celebrate. But it's interesting because it's back then I probably would have said celebrations, they have to be big, they have to be fancy. And I'm no, there are such little ways to celebrate in daily life. And I think that's part of what makes being where your feet are so special is finding those ways to celebrate the victories, even if the victory is the pants today, even if the victory is getting out of bed, celebrate that. It is freaking hard in 2024 to be a human. Yes. We need to celebrate every chance we get that we made it through another day. Yeah.
And all those tiny little joys. I know, people like to make fun of Starbucks girlies for being so basic and blah, blah, blah. But I'm you know what? Call me basic if you want. But if there is a day where I'm I just need a little joy, or I'm celebrating something, or it's going to spur me on and I want to get a pumpkin spice latte or whatever it is, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to thank God that he made it, because it is delicious and it is going to bring me just a little bit of extra something.
Well, and just, this is a side note, but it does kind of touch on it. It's that exactly. I think it comes back to what we were saying. It's knowing yourself, knowing what you love, knowing what those little joys and delights are that you can give yourself. So for me, it might be the Starbucks, or in a regular afternoon, it's I'm going to make myself a little cup of tea. Oh, I've got my favorite little drink in the fridge, things like that. They are self-care. It's taking care of yourself. Yeah. As you hustle, as you push, as we all live these crazy lives, it's those to me are the little pit stops. They're the ways to check in with yourself that me 10 years ago in that depression had none of that. None of that.
Yeah. Well, and you also talked about starting medication and what a struggle that was too. And we are very pro medicine here. I very much believe in Jesus and science. But what do you think it is, Hannah, that the church maybe gets wrong about mental health? I know this could be the whole podcast.
Let me loose.
And what do we get wrong, and what can they do better?
Gosh, I will say, I feel like we have made strides. I do feel like we've made strides, and I see it every year. It gets a little bit easier to talk about depression, anxiety. It's not 10 years ago. It was we were not talking about it. We were not. And I don't know. To be honest, I have no clue. I don't understand the issue with the medication. I think it may be because when medication first came to the forefront, it was at a time where we were not talking about depression and anxiety. And so it kind of felt foreign. And so as a result, felt stigmatized.
Okay.
But man, I remember being in that spot, having doctors tell me that I needed medication, and I didn't want the medication because I was so scared that God would be mad at me, or other people had said things over my life that made me feel I shouldn't need medication. And I look back now and I'm my brain was broken. My brain was not producing serotonin. I needed help. Right. Just in the way that somebody who is sick and needs medicine is not afraid to take that medicine, Yes. And that's why I literally, any chance I get, talk about medication. I am not advocating for it for you need to be on it for life, but if you are, that's fine. I'm not advocating for so much medication that you can't feel anything at all. That's its own thing. But man, I have been on medication for 10 years. I'm still on it today. Yeah. I have tried, I think, once or twice to go off of it. And I was just my brain should not have to work this hard. Yeah. And that's also coming from somebody who works really hard to move her body, fuel herself, take a functional medicine approach. And I am still on Prozac, still on it, because for me to thrive, I need that. For me to show up for my daughter, I need that. For me to show up for my family, I need that. And, gosh, I think that we are moving closer in talking about it. It does seem though that we still talk a lot about like depression, but like not medication, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
But I do remember years ago, like a few years ago, I got this like Instagram message from this girl who basically told me that I wasn't living in the full power of God because I had taken medication, and that God could have healed me in an instant if I'd had that faith. And I'm like, this is why we talk about this, because that is so damaging. Correct. And there were people within my fight for depression that were saying things like that to me that I was so confused. I was so not in my right mind that I believed them. And now looking back, you're like, no, that is not the character of God. That is not the way that I'm going to approach healing. Like, just because I've not been 100% healed does not mean that me and God are not partnered in the work that we do every single day. But like, I may walk with a limp for the rest of my life. And you know what? I'm fine with that, because that is what allows me to break open the conversations with other people. That is what allows me to help somebody get to the doctor to start taking medication that they have needed to take for 5 years. And so I get very fired up about the conversation, because I'm like, I think that God wants us to be well. He wants us to be whole. He designed us for abundance. And we are living in a fallen world where there are so many factors and circumstances that could keep us from that. It's our food system. It's the environment. There's so much there that it's like, if you take a medication, or you have to take a medication for a season, and it makes you feel like you don't have to fight so hard, that you're not crying every single day, that you're actually showing up to love people in the way that you want to love them. Like, to me, that is a gift. That is a modern gift. Like, and so, sorry. I am like, whoo.
No, I love it. I was like, yes. Well, that is the danger, right? The danger is, I'm just thinking even from like a pastoral, this past Sunday, I thought I was just doing a message on like making peace with your past. Like that's what the message was, but it really did. I talked about therapy, and I encourage people to go to therapy. And I can't tell you, Hannah, the number of people that talk to me after or have messaged me to say, thank you so much for advocating for mental health, like from the pulpit, because it doesn't happen. And there were just so many stories, like you said, of damage where people are not in their right mind, are already questioning that whether or not their faith is strong enough, if God still loves them, still sees them, if God has removed himself from their lives. So then for them to go to church and then hear like, oh yeah, actually your faith is not strong enough, or you would not be dealing with this, is just, breaking like the tiniest little shreds of faith or connection that they've got left. Where, if the medication helps you to hear God instead of all the other voices, like, I want to like give it out to people.
No, it was like when I remember taking it for the first time, and it took a few weeks to like get into my system. They often say it gets worse before it gets better, but like, man, it was like one day I was like, the fog lifted, and I was like, so you're saying I could have been experiencing this for years? Cause like now looking back, like that was a very severe depression, but I could see I'd always been prone to anxiety. Even as a little kid, I just didn't have the language for it. I dug deeper into my health to be like, oh, like I had psoriasis and still have psoriasis. That's an autoimmune disease. It's often tied to low serotonin production, which is often tied to depression. Like it was all right there, but it was like, I felt for some reason, if I'm not struggling, it's not holy enough or something, you know?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And like, I remember too, like, I think there was a lot of conversation at that time of like, oh, well, if you are depressed, you just need to get closer to God. You just need to dig in deeper. You just need to pray more. And I look back at that and I'm like, that was maybe one of the unhealthiest things I ever did at that time, to take a new believer who did not know the Bible, who was having ruminations and intrusive thoughts, trying to just know God. It just spiraled me deeper and deeper and deeper, where I look back and I wish that someone had said like, hey, you need community, you need a therapist, you need medication, you need to like take a break from trying to read the Bible on your own. Like maybe get a study, maybe get a Max Lucado book. He seems to believe that God loves him, you know? I always pick up Max Lucado when I need a reminder that like God really loves me.
Oh.
But but we didn't have the language to talk about it. And so that's where it's like that I will spend my whole entire breath, every second that I'm on this earth, helping people. Mm-hmm. And even though I have been in remission from that severe depression for 10 years, that's not like, oh, it went away. And now it is like every day we have to work to stay in maintenance mode. And it looks a lot more rigorous than I think most people choose to live their lives. And it looks like a lot more self-discipline, but it's literally like, this is what I have to do to be a healthy, thriving, whole person. And so, yeah, in ways I do have that struggle because there are definitely times where I'm like, you know what? I want to throw this all to the side and just like live however I want to live. But like, no, this is that narrow path of like every day to stay healthy. These are the things that I have to do. And I find God in those things.
Yeah. Well, I hate that you had to go through it, but I'm also so grateful for your voice. I have I'm a mom of 2 daughters with generalized anxiety, one diagnosed, one going through the process of the diagnosis we're pretty sure is going to come. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for the way that you continue to just bravely show up and keep talking and encouraging people. So
Thank you. I will do it till I die. I'll be here. I'm going to be here.
Good. If you are struggling with your mental health, I've linked up some resources in the show notes. Please don't believe the lie that this is how things will always be, or that you are not worth the time and attention it will take to make things different. Struggling with your mental health is not a sign of weak faith. God sees you and he's right there with you. He isn't disappointed in you and he wants you to be well. He loves you and he wants you to be whole. Call the mental health hotline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 866-903-3787, where someone is waiting just to listen and help. Now back to my conversation with Hannah. All right. Well, your next book, this one just came out recently. I've got it also right here. The Unplugged Hours.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to do a little quick fire because if I'm being honest with you, other people are going to do what I did and they're going to see this and they're going to think that you're demonizing social media and telling them to turn their phones off. So here's what we're going to do to let people know. We're going to ease them in. We're going to do a little quick fire about technology. Good stuff.
Good.
Yes. I want to know, what is your favorite app on your phone?
Oh my gosh, I have so many apps that I do love. But I love Instagram. I really love it.
Okay, good.
I would say that unplugging made me love it more.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite thing about the internet, like as a whole?
I think, okay, as somebody who grew up, like I grew up wanting to be an author my whole entire life. Had I been an author 20 years ago, like I may have gotten some like fan mail letters in the mail, but like I think it is such an awesome privilege and a gift to be able to connect with readers on a daily basis, that they can email me, that they can message me. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I think that's what I love, is the way that we can connect with one another and the way that, like, say, for instance, you and me, we met in person, but now we have continually been able to keep up with one another because of social media. And I think that's really beautiful. Yeah.
Super fun. All right. Who's somebody that you love to follow?
Gosh, I have so many friends that I love to follow. I love my friend Carly Roman. She wasn't my friend when I started following her. I just would watch all of her videos, but she does like day in the life as like a stay-at-home mom who's like budgeting. I love her to pieces. She's a wonderful person in and out, but I love watching day in the life videos. They give me so much joy. Okay. And I think that's because I like to see other people's rhythms and routines.
Yeah. All right. What's something that you've learned from the internet or from social media?
That it probably would benefit a lot of people's mental health to like take a break from it or get some boundaries, because I don't know if you've been on social media these days, but people are feral right now. They are feral. Like there's actually
it's the best. You are so accurate. So accurate.
There's actually like science out there. There is a research experiment that happened many years ago that like determined that we cap out at, I think it's 125 connections. That is the capacity of what we have to handle. Yeah. And when you tip the scale and make it go past that, people get feral. They get angry. They fight each other. Like they get primal. And the people that designed Facebook, they knew about that experiment. They wanted to tip the scales. And as a result, I look at the comment section sometimes and I'm like, oh my goodness. And then if I go to your profile, I'm sure you've quoted songs. Yes. Like some people really need a detox. They need to take a break. They do.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to not respond to the comments, but I did have to get in one there the other day because somebody came for me and had a scripture listed in their profile about like, you know, Jesus calling them to ministry. And I was like, oh, so per your scripture in your bio, who is it again that gets to decide and why I'm not allowed to do what I'm doing? Okay. And I digress. Thank you so much.
Our thing is like, if somebody leaves a mean comment, I literally like kill them with kindness. It works nearly every time because people are not expecting you to be kind. And I'm like, that's all we're going to do is be kind. Same thing. We get an email and it's mean. It's like, let's just kill them with kindness.
Yep. Oh, once somebody even messaged me, somebody was snarky. I was super kind. And then they actually sent me a DM and apologized and was like, hey,
that's insane.
I didn't actually expect that. And it made me realize and I was like, you could have done that publicly and like shown everybody that, but also I'll take it.
People are either expecting a fight or this is the thing that has come up over and over again. People are not expecting you to respond.
Yeah. Right.
Which means that all of the anger or the bitterness or the discontent that the internet trolls are facing and feeling, they're lobbing it in the direction of people that they think are like two-dimensional characters. So the best thing that you can do is respond and be like, I'm a person. Right. Thanks for letting me know.
Right. And then it gets very quiet.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
All right. So explain to our listeners the unplugged hours, what it is, how you came up with 1,000 hours, the whole thing.
Yes. So I am not anti-phone. I'm not anti-social media. I didn't realize until marketing this book how hard it was going to be to market this book. Like, because I've been unplugging for years now. And it's become a daily rhythm in my life that has been so life-giving. But then I started to do these interviews and I was like, oh, people don't want to unplug.
No, they don't.
And if they do, or like they're like, that's a nice concept, but I'm not really going to do it. And so it was like, it's been actually really difficult and eye-opening. But what I'm talking about basically is like, and why I came up with 1,000 hours was because I'm not telling anybody, hey, unplug your phone for 1,000 hours in one fell swoop. Like, you don't need to go off the grid. You don't need to throw your phone away. You don't need to go live off in a commune in the woods. So that would probably be very nice. Like, it's more so like, can we find pockets in daily life where we are present, where we are uninterrupted, where our attention is going to the thing that we are doing, whether it is a bedtime routine, whether it is your own nighttime routine, whether it is cooking a meal for your family, whether it is your quiet time. Can we start to isolate these hours? I think the hour is the perfect metric for it, to be with ourselves. And like, it's been absolutely life-changing for me. I think of all the rhythms I have ever cultivated in my life, unplugging is the best one. It is the one that has made me feel more myself than I have ever felt in my life. And it ebbs and it flows because it's like, I don't think that unplugging necessarily gets easier. Like, I don't think like now, thousands of unplugged hours later, like I get to this point now where I just like naturally am an unplugged person. Like, but every time I turn off my phone, I am reminded of like, this is why I love this. This is why I love unplugging. It's like the time to think, breathe, be creative, deal with my feelings, all of it. I think that's like the biggest barrier that we're facing. And I think the barrier that's contributing to a lot of mental illness right now is that There's too much noise. There's too much overstimulation. There's too many things to check. And as a result, we are these like frantic, anxious people.
Yeah. Practically, how did you start? Like if somebody was like, you know, like you said, that's cute. That's fun.
Cute, yeah.
That's good. That's real good for you, Hannah. Yay, yay. Like where do they start? Because truly, in my mind, I'm like, well, I slept for 7 hours, so I'm going to fill in 7 bubbles. That is cheating.
Always want to do the sleep. I know.
That is cheating.
No, but I will sometimes say though, like I will count my naps as unplugged. I will.
That counts. That counts. That counts. Yeah.
Because like you're choosing to rest your body rather than scroll, you know? Yeah. Okay. So originally, before I ever had the trackers, the only time that I really unplugged would be like for work. I wanted to do really focused work. I'm in that like focused work pile, you know? And so I had this little tin box, and whenever I was going to do any kind of creative writing or brainstorming, all of that, I would take my phone and I would put it in the box. And that was it. It was like, I'm not telling anybody they have to turn it off, but put it away. Just put it away. But it was like during my quiet time several years ago that it was my birthday, I remember, and I was like making all these plans for the year to come. And I felt this nudge in my spirit. And it's like only a handful of times in my life has this happened that I've heard something so clearly. And I just heard, turn off your phone. And I knew in that moment, it was like not turn off your phone once, reap all the benefits. Like I knew this was like no, we're going to spend this year turning off your phone. Okay. And if anything, I want to be obedient. Right. So that's why I made a tracker. I am a big believer that you can't manage what you don't measure. And that's why a lot of us start things and we fail things. We're not measuring it. If we're trying to just measure it in our mind, we're going to end up back at day one over and over and over again. And so I looked realistically at like, okay, 1,000 hours in 1 year comes out to around 3 to 4 unplugged hours a day. Okay. It's not impossible. It's hard. Yes. And then I just started going hour by hour. That was it. Literally. I didn't even look at the full 1,000. I just was like, okay, today I want to be unplugged for the morning, for getting my daughter ready for school. I don't want to be like on my phone when I'm driving her to the carpool line. Okay. That ends up being 1 hour. Okay. At night, I don't want to be checking my emails. I don't want to be like doing that one last task. And so I started turning off my phone at like 6 or 7 p.m. Okay. The beautiful thing is that the tracker doesn't mean it has to be every day. I think that that's something that we get stuck on with discipline, and why we fail so much is because if it's an everyday thing, again, we're not designed for overhauls. And so you miss a day, you feel you got to go back to square one. I'm like, no, 1,000 hours could be 3 hours. It could be playing catch up later in the month. It could be doing a longer Sabbath where for 24 hours you are on your phone as little as you can be. And so I had to just kind of learn hour by hour how to make this a routine, how to make this a practice. And it became easier over time as I figured out the things that I loved doing and the things that I loved doing fully present. Yeah. And I do really appreciate that the tracker is just a bunch of bubbles. It's just 1,000 bubbles. Because if it was on a calendar, if it was day and hour and whatever, I would be real good for the first week, and then I would throw it in the trash because and that's I would say to anybody that you're looking at it and you're like, I don't ever turn off my phone. I'm never without my phone. I'm checking it day and night. Then don't even start with an hour. Start with 15 minutes. You know, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I would say think about something you've wanted to do for a while, or something that's been looming over your head that you've known that you need to do. Yeah. Set a timer for 15 minutes, put the phone away, do the thing. You'll come back to your phone and it will all be there. It'll all be there. Won't go away. Yeah. And that counts, right? Like, if you're going to take a nap, if you're going to go see a movie, if you're going to whatever, like all that counts. All of it counts. Yeah. Like if me and my husband sit down to watch a movie at the end of the day and we're both not on our phones and we're watching a film, that is unplugged to me, because it's more so about your attention. Where are you placing your attention? So if we were to sit down and watch a movie and we're both scrolling, that's not unplugged. But if we are like both intentionally placing our attention on a piece of art that has been created, like that to me is unplugged. And so that's the other thing. you define what unplugged means for you. It should feel like freedom. It should feel like joy. It should not make your life harder.
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out what that looks like for you and then own it. I get people all the time that are like, I love to listen to audiobooks and I feel unplugged in that time. I'm like, great,
that
go
counts.
for it. That counts. Like you do a workout on your phone. That counts. Like you get to decide, but like have fun with it.
Yes, I love that. And I love the idea too of present. Like I would not count if I was in a meeting for an hour and couldn't check my phone. Like I would not count that because I'm not doing something present. I'm not like, I didn't look at it, but I'm also like doing this intensive work thing. You know, that doesn't count to me.
No, I'm with you. Because I'm also probably in that checking calendars, checking emails, all of it. So I think it really comes down to attention. Am I being fully present in this moment? And then that's when I gauge whether it's like considered an unplugged hour or not.
So one more tip, Hannah, for people that, because you said you love Instagram, as do I. What's your best tip for people engaging and balancing, like engaging in real life and also on social media? Maybe especially for the person that is in a new city or doesn't have a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
How can they manage the two?
I think it really comes down to like what we've been saying this whole conversation is like, you have to know yourself, right? Like, so like, you know, what's working, what's not working. And so for me personally, I think years ago, I think especially when I started unplugging, I do feel like I felt like my life was online. I felt like that was where I had to be because it made me feel important. It made me feel seen. It made me feel validated. And it's so freeing now to be like, you know what? That's a place that I go online for work, for connection, but my life is not there anymore. And so I think it comes down to like, okay, where are you spending too much time online? What are some tweaks and boundaries you can make? As a content creator, I would say the first thing that I would tell you to do is to stop creating on the platform. That is like the biggest thing. I think we go as content creators online to figure out what to post. Our ideas are not there. Our ideas are not in somebody else's feed. I cannot recommend enough, like building a creative space for you to come up with ideas for how to serve your people well, and then show up on the app when you have something to bring. It's almost like
that is really good.
When you go to a dinner party, like don't go to a dinner party empty handed, bring something with you. And so that's kind of my rule of thumb in a lot of ways. It's like, especially with Instagram, I'm not going on that app unless I have something to contribute to that app or I'm tying up a loop. I try to comment on nearly as many comments as I can get to for that connection piece with my people. I'm also just like a big advocate of like, you know, it's my social media platforms. It's going to be me responding to those things. It's going to be me posting. And so it's not like I'm telling anybody, hey, get off social media for good. We've seen people do that. We've seen people in droves leave social media. And I had to step back for myself and be like, okay, when I first got on this platform, it was fun. I enjoyed it. How do we get back to that place? And that's, again, it's the little by little. It's the bit by bit. It's the handling the hour ahead of you rather than trying to overhaul your existence or put all these like app blockers on your phone. I think
you're going to ignore anyway. The timer's going to pop up and
exactly.
You've hit an hour and you're going to go, I don't care.
Yeah. And that's where I think like you just have to, the biggest thing for me has been like approaching myself with compassion and almost like parenting myself. Like I can parent my daughter. I know that like as much as she would like to sit and watch Paw Patrol all day, it's not good for her. She needs sunlight. She needs meals. She needs connection. And so I give her all those things. I should do the same for myself. I should say, you know what? I know you want to sit on TikTok all day, but like, what about reading a book? What about going for a walk? What about listening to an audiobook? And so it's parenting yourself better with your relationship with social media.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right. So the last question, because the podcast is called Becoming Church, how will unplugging help listeners become the church to the people around them?
You will pay attention more to the people around you. You will I have this like note in my phone that I keep, that I like write down little notes of things that like my friends say that they love or that they always have, or, you know, and so that is really what the phone is doing. It's stealing our attention. And I think the best way to be church is to see the people around us. And so whether that's like my neighbors, whether that is the delivery drivers, whether that is the man experiencing homelessness on the side of the road, if I am distracted, I cannot see them. When I am present, I can feel the nudges from God telling me like, hey, make the cinnamon rolls. Hey, make the card and put it in the mailbox. Yeah. Hey, next time that you're by this roadside, bring cash. Right. I think those nudges are happening all the time. But if we're too overloaded by the notifications, we miss the most important ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I do truly think that Holy Spirit shows up in every second of the day, and we, for phone or whatever reason, I just think we miss so much of God communicating to us and showing up in different places because either we're distracted or we're looking for it to be something else. Like we think we know what God is going to say.
Yep.
And so when he says something different, we're like, oh, well, that's not you because I'm waiting on you to say this.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Exactly. Oh, it's so true. It goes like, I love that verse, Psalm 5, about like, I lay the pieces on my life on the altar and wait expectantly. And I'm like, that is what I want to do in every hour of my day. It's like, here, God, this is my life. This is the next hour. This is the next 3 hours. Where do you want to show up? What do you have for me? And he answers.
Yeah. 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 Oh, I love that. Well, this has been so great. I will link up the books and your Instagram and all of the things. Also really, really quick, because it is maybe my favorite thing that you do. You're doing Advent this year, right?
Yes. I love Advent.
What's your theme? What's the Advent theme? Just give us the tiniest little sneak peek.
Honestly, it's presence. It's always presence. Perfect. It's about paying attention. And I think like the core of it is like, I take people through the Christmas story, that when I started to investigate the Christmas story and pay attention to it, I was like, oh, this is nothing like what I grew up with. This was nothing like the nativity actually portrayed. And that's it. Like it's an investigative look at the season of Advent and getting people to pay attention to the season.
Yeah. I'm sure I have quoted you because I know for a fact that every time I write a Christmas message, I actually go to your Advent like emails, and I've got them saved from years because I just, they're so beautiful and I love them so much. So I'm going to link that up too, so everybody can go read them.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you. Thanks for being here. I can't encourage you enough to sign up for Hannah's Advent emails using the link in the show notes. You just scroll down wherever it is that you're listening to this episode, and the links are always right there underneath. Also, if you're looking for people to spend Christmas with, we would love to have you celebrate with us at Mosaic. If you're local, you can join us on Christmas Eve at 4 p.m. or 6 p.m. for Christmas carols, Santa, pictures in front of the Christmas tree, a message on the hope of Jesus, and a candlelight singing of Silent Night. If you're not able to make it in person, you can join us for the service online at mosaicCLT.online.church. Either way, I hope this conversation helps you to have a more peaceful holiday season, and I would love for you to share it with someone else who maybe could use the same thing. Until next time, thanks for listening and keep becoming the church to the people around you.